Good afternoon from beautiful Blue Mountains, Australia. Pear and I are having a fabulous time visiting the awe-inspiring elegance and majesty of Australia's natural wonders. Would you like to say something to the group, dear?
We are having a marvelous time. We are staying at Hotel Mountain Heritage, which offers breathtaking panoramic views of the Blue Mountains. We appreciate you listening to another webinar from us.
We are here to do this trigger point of realization that is an opportunity for you to rise in a new motion where you suddenly understand exactly what's going on. It's like a brilliant illumination of what the real problem is. So when you go into the trigger point of realization, the image arises in yourself. And if you go into your seaship and you go into your heart and you allow whatever's there to play out, you will suddenly see exactly what you need to see to rise through whatever's bringing you strife or tiredness or a feeling of frustration or a feeling of disorder in yourself where you can't get organized or focused, or a feeling of depression, or a feeling of delusion, or a feeling of something else that may be going on that you don't quite get enough to say, okay, I forgive that, and motion it away. Now, realization is a beautiful aspiration also for any star seed because you want to realize through to why you don't illuminate your life in light, okay? That's the big problem and quagmire for most of you. Now you have your seed casing around you from the homecoming trigger point, and that's beautiful to be inside yourself because what it does is it reels you in so you can be more centered and centrically in place in the heart space of you and know yourself better. As of late, all people have received an egg due to the angelic design of a beautiful Tao that's intervening on behalf of Earth and on behalf of humanity from a neighboring galaxy. For the last few weeks, all these new angels are showing up in the works, and they have been examining what's going on. They looked at the sea eggs and they said, "Oh, let's give this to everyone." And what that does is it reels people in to be inside themselves. Lo and behold, the critters or the creatures that are kind of gross, the gargoyles and hellions, and all these other things rise out of the egg because they don't like being confined. And then they can be popped or pushed aside so people can be more driven by themselves and the angels rather than something else. You may have found in the last few days things are calmer wherever you work or wherever you go, and your aspirations in any day. And in that, you're a little bit better, maybe a little less tired, and a little bit fuller in yourself for being here with you and not something else. The kids are really getting it through about age 18 that this egg system is so much better because they're not inside their parents or their teachers or one another trying to figure life out. And they come back to themselves, and all of a sudden, ho, okay, I know who I am, and I know where I need to go. That's what the C system didn't cause, but the angels witnessed it in each of you, and then chose to say, well, this is what every human needs, so let's just give it to them in another way. And they can relay information in through the mirrors of the eggs around them that they need to know that's archetypal or surrounds light emotion and light motion and how to do it. SOSA has a little broadcast of light education that comes through every egg, now including yours. So the SOSA broadcast is generally 2 hours a day. If you want to focus on it and listen to it, and you're lucid enough, you probably can as you sit quietly in meditation and say, okay, I want to see what this SOSA lesson is today. If you can't hear it, that's okay because you get it at night when you sleep. But the truth is that the education is more astute through SOSA because they put it in language that people can understand better. We love Babaji and we love Baba. We loved Ananda, but they were really Egyptian formulas for understanding light. And perhaps that worked in other time periods where people were more indigenous. But today it failed in it, and they ended up dying in a combustion action due to a problem on the planet, and they haven't been able to be revived. So SOSA is taking their place and providing education for each of you about how to motion in light, and that's beautiful. So the first thing we want to talk about is in the trigger point of realization, and as you enter it every 8 days. But you can also invoke it just out of your own need to understand something when you come home at the end of the day and want to go into a meditative stance. Say, I want to go into my trigger point and realization. But one of the things that will do is it will illuminate your seed. So this egg around you will grow in light and grow in light and grow in light until it reaches a certain pitch where you can rise in your mind and your vision above what's bothering you. And you may find certain things that are bothering you about other people you hadn't thought of. You know, one of the things about the older generation is they're just not present in their body, and light goes on, and they're even further out of body than they used to be. That's hard because it's like no one's home. Knock knock. Who's there talking to me if you're talking to me at all? And are you even able to navigate in your dream of the workplace or wherever I'm encountering you? That's a problem in these big gates for many of the older generation that just don't have a handle on light and anchoring for themselves in some other way that works, and if so, they're just not home. You can't really put them at home exactly, but the seed egg that comes with the angels around them starts to help with this standard way that they may molder up and out through their cortex and leave. And so if you notice people that are really not present or don't respond to you or can't be there, call the angels in and put them in their seed casing in a mirror to get them gathered back to themselves, some in light wave motion. That will help maybe in your friendships or with your parents or with your grandparents or with even those that you may associate with at work. It will get them more in their center, and then perhaps they'll be more present to talk to you or respond to you or do something else with you. That's just a suggestion for all of you, because light can be very much something that used to kind of sway with sound, and so people would sway in sound and sway up in light a little bit. That's true for the generation 40 plus in age, that they used to sway up in light, and that was about as much as they wanted to infuse, and it may have led to about an 83% light infused level of the spine. All light infusion levels are related to the spine, but as seeds you went and infused a lot more. So you're going on maybe 90 to 93% infusion levels in the spine. It has to be done gradually, otherwise you end up diseased. You can kind of muscle test or measure for yourself where you're at. So you're way above the pitch of the ones that used to sway in light with shatar, but as such you can help them mend something that perhaps they need the touch of a star seed to do. If they're a seedling, they'll respond very positive to it, but it will also get rid of the gargoyles and the other creatures that inhabit the body that drive you nuts, maybe in your association, because they're either aggressive or abused or perhaps silent and say nothing, or they're just weird. That's hard today because people can go that way in mature light, especially the older generation, and have a hard time navigating their system of work or friendship or anything. They're often the ones you have to realize beyond because they say something weird to you, or they do something weird to you, or they feel threatening to you. I think that's the hard part. For the sensitivity level of seeds is they're there and you feel they're unconscious, and subconscious gargoyle communications that tell you to die or not to live, or I hate you, or I wish you were not here anymore, or I want to lay you off if they're a boss. Those subliminal messages aren't true to what may happen at all, because the truth is you're there as a light, emulsifying human, dreaming your dream with your Tao and Tao. And if you're there, you belong there, and they're not going to be able to rush you out. But it's an gargoyle problem in these people that subliminally communicate at you and make you feel unwell. They can be anywhere, including out in the grocery store and some friends that you haven't seen in a while, or somewhere else like in your parents or whatever. And the more they move out of body, the more that their ancestors are no longer present, and the more something else is, such as a creature of some sort that may be very angry or disturbed, or something else quiet, or something else you didn't used to experience in your association with them. And so if you get the angels to come in and give them a sea egg around them, just like you've received, then these creatures will pop out. They'll start to come back into your center. They'll pull themselves back together, and they'll feel better in the major light gates that are motioning maybe around their neighborhoods or wherever they're motioning in it. I think that's very important for each that you know, each that you work with, or each throughout your whole company, to get them in their light seas. When you're traveling, then put everybody on the airplane and everybody on the airport. Make sure they're in the sea egg casing with the angels. It's an angelic sea casing. It's different from a star sea casing, but still it has the same effect. People will be a little bit more ordered in their dreams for going through the airport and the flight, and they won't be inside out on top of you or inside you, causing you to feel unwell as you take your journey or wherever you're going. That can be true on the roadways too, because the road rage that Pear and Asur'Ana have noticed is very heavy in Mesa, Arizona, where they call home for 6 months each year. It's like Los Angeles drivers everywhere cutting each other off, and as the sea system went around people, it started to calm down. Then we realized, okay, everyone on this road with us, we called upon the angels. Angels, these people need their sea system of yours around them. And then the gargoyles have popped out, and they'll quit doing this weirdness everywhere we go, where we get cut off all the time. It's just weird, and finally it will calm down for everyone, because they'll just be a little bit more mindful and present in their experience of driving. Even younger people that may be using drugs, such as meth, which is going over the ocean of truth, because The kids are trying to figure something out, and the math aspires something in their mind that feels better to them than perhaps their parents or life or whatever it is. It can also be very damaging to the brain and lead to other problems like Parkinson's, which is sick, but I think they're also coming up with concoctions that are maybe milder. I don't know. I see it also with kids almost on some kind of amphetamine substance where they're like raging or racing around the store, around the restaurant, or whatever they're doing. I think that's also the problem on the road. It's something to keep them going, and I don't think it's natural. I think it's drug-based, but whatever it is, it makes for this system of leaping in light rather than swaying, and that's very strange. But as these young people end up in their seed casing from the angels, they start to calm down and they start to sway again, and sway with a very big chateau position that this is how we relate together. We sway together, we enjoy each other's company, we love one another, we heal together, and we sway together. The gargoyles interfere with that, and as they pop out of the seed casings of everyone else, then suddenly they start to sway again and sing together again in a unique way with the angels of their lives, because each is receiving an angel of their life to help live their life through the end of time of this light wave galaxy of ourselves. So it may be that a lot of your disturbances with others simply evolves into another state of being now that people are getting some attention, going in a direction with Sosa and the angels that's really needed in this time period. That's always true, perhaps even for all associations that are still troublesome to you. So put your parents and your grandparents and all association aunts and uncles, nieces, nephews, brothers, sisters, whoever you might have to engage with along with their children. Make sure in your mind that they go into the sea system with the angels, the angelic sea system, so that they're better with you next time you have to see them. And even so, there may be something you need to realize beyond in relation to you, or relation to your past, or relation to something that unfolded that needs to be Nemesis dreamed through. So what the trigger point of realization will do is, as you finally drift off to sleep every 8 days, you go into a nemesis quagmire of what is it that's disturbing you, that's now and in the past, and then you research it in your own system of existence to understand what happened to you when you were 4 or 5 or 7 or 9 or 12 or 15 or whatever it was. Maybe you got swatted by an auntie when you really loved them, or perhaps your mother yelled at you when you ran through the house with muddy shoes, or maybe the dog bit your mother and she's screaming, or perhaps you fell out of your high chair, or maybe something else weird happened and you nearly drowned in the bathtub. Or perhaps you splashed water everywhere and she's screaming at you because now the bathroom's wet and she's not laughing in the enthusiasm of you at all. Whatever these traumas are, they're very tumultuous to seize. They're tumultuous to other people too, but most of them are kind of numb in their nervous systems. Ceilings are less numb, and childhood trauma is very disturbing to ceilings too. But ceilings only number maybe 18,000 worldwide out of 8 billion. So when you find one, they're precious, and try to keep them as a friend or someone that you enjoy, or perhaps even a partner, because they're precious in a way that you understand in you. They may be sensitive and shy or have a hard time with the world because it's so aggressive in the older society of the oligarchy system. Oligarchy people's anthology is very numb in the nerves, so they're harsh in a way because they don't feel, and sometimes they don't sway very well as a result, or sometimes they're kind of agitated in their sway. So you're sensitive and you go into a sway with one of them. Now maybe even if they have a seat around them, perhaps you come out a little agitated or uncomfortable as you end the sway and walk off. That was true in Shatar too. But as you molder light as a seed, it's even worse. And those are the people you need to realize something about, maybe in you in relation to other times in your life where the agitation of your parents or brothers or sisters or aunts and uncles or teachers or someone else that babysat you, whoever they were, really bothered you in the sensitivity level of your nerves as a star seed. A lot of times their expressions can be very cruel when they themselves don't see what they say is cruel at all, because they're so numb. They don't feel where you go as you start to cry or emote or feel awful about what they communicate. This is a very sick society where there's no communication classes. There's no classes on how to be present and raise your children. There's no classes on anything. You know, society educates you in numbers and letters of the alphabet and things that are kind of stupid in a way in relation to what life is all about. The school systems for Waldorf or Steiner or Montessori may be better because they're more creative in their expression and they try to create presence or understanding of the needs to be aware of each other. Some are kind of religious, like the Ananda school system, and there may be systems in Christian thinking too that may be more concerned about how children relate in love than perhaps something else. if you need a private school for your kids, perhaps you think about some of those because maybe they be quite beautiful in a way if their focus is love. But in this society is numbers. This is a society about numbers, so they're concerned about their money, and their bank accounts. You probably had one parent, if not two, that had a problem with that, or a grandparent or two, where it was about money, and every time the money seemed threatened, then they were threatened about how they spent their time, or perhaps how you spent your time, or what they bought for you, or whatever it was. That's another really big point to realize beyond is that in the oligarchy 7-7 systems, it's all about money. Usually there's a parent or grandparent or aunt or uncle that's in the 7-7 motion, and they're always going to be worried about the bank account. Maybe in your childhood, your parents need to save more and spend less on you as a child, or perhaps something else occurs where one of your parents, either your father or your mother, bought you lots of things because they had a little bit more money, but it was devoid of love. One initiate in our Dreamtime Ascension School, or DAS, remembered her childhood as having had a beautiful wardrobe and many things that were nice that her mother bought for her, but there was absolutely no love in her family. She actually felt hate coming from her mother's unconscious rather than love. She would rather be in a loving family without anything than feel this way. That can often be a memory bank of you too, way back when you were a child, where the things were somehow to replace love. Now with this initiate's grandmother, it was about food. She was polished, and she would cook her polished sausages and all this food that's really bad for you, macaroni and cheese and these things. Her mother was a health food addict and didn't want her to be fed like funny cereals with Lucky Charms in them. But when our initiate went to her grandmother's house, there was love in the food and her digestion was better. So she ate the kebab and she ate all these other things that her grandmother prepared and actually felt better sometimes than her mother cooking these organic meals because her mother dumped hate at an unconscious level in everything. So look back at two things in your life at this time in the trigger point of realization where money was more important than you. Where is it where hate went into the food and made you sick? That can happen at restaurants too, but usually these are the ones you avoid as a starseed because you don't feel well afterwards. They make your stomach go cold and it doesn't digest. And then where is it that the love of the food went into the food with a grandparent or somebody nurturing? If that was your mother, feel very blessed to have lived and cooked that way in your life because that's very beautiful to have lived that way. And the other thing is to look at where the corporate system, if you're working for a corporation of some kind, is more interested in money than they're interested in the people that they employ. Some of you are hitting that equation a lot these days and may feel it in your work happenstance of fate because the company is more interested in their profit line with the accounting department than they're interested in you or anybody else. That's not always true because there are some companies that motion a lot of light and have a lot of presence of themselves in their world. Per experienced this shopping for his Macintosh laptop. The Apple store was filled with young people that were very aware and astute and helped with the training and got everything together and were very present in their hearts. He was absolutely amazed. The light organizations that organize a lot are going to attract people who are astute and aware and present, whereas other systems aren't. If you relocate yourself to such a job, you're better. But the point is in you somewhere along the line, and this is a good thing to realize beyond in your own social programming. There is a belief that money comes first in all circumstances. And there's a belief also that love can be present only in the food. Now that's a very weird thing, but that's how the oligarchy system thinks. So you can have love in food but not in the family. You can have love in the restaurant but not in the home kitchen, maybe sometimes. You can have love not in yourself, but you can get it through the food. And hence the grandparent that says eat, 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 have some more of that, even when you're stuffed, because they're trying to love you in their own way. Sometimes parents are like that too. The third thing you can be aware of is that in the oligarchy society system, the need to work 8 hours a day is very important. Now, if you have freedom on the job and can go here and there, then lightweight dream that you were there for 8 hours, even if you take off early. They may not notice that and may be helpful to you, and it's just that way. Now, in light societies, usually 4 hours a day is enough for work, and not every day of the week, because you need time to create and time to relax, time to be with one another, time to share in your partnerships, time to be with your children, and time to do things that are beautiful in your life that make you feel well. That's a natural stanza of light, and a lot of people can feel very unwell having to work 5 days a week, 8 hours a day, and if you don't like what you're doing, try to find a job that gives you more freedom. There are jobs that sometimes include motions to travel from here to there, and perhaps that's better, and call on people, and then you can cheat a little here and there and end your date early. Wherever it is a very odd system in the 7-7 galaxy of this society to say this is your prescribed time of work and you have to be there on time and you have to do all of these things and then you can get paid for your time with us and that's all. They dislike you if you don't really get everything done on time because they have something in their mind that says this is the deadline of this project. Each of you that are there in some kind of job, when you're programming or trying to push a project through, there's this deadline and there's this sense of stress until you get it done or through. An associate of ours had it in her father's printing business because there were always deadlines where people needed this or that tomorrow instead of next month, and there were those that didn't care. It would be printed and it would sit on the shelf a month before they pick it up. Whatever it is an oligarchy system of pressure that you can also look at and diffuse. So you can diffuse the belief that money is more important than you. Diffuse the belief that love can only be in your food. Diffuse the belief that you need to work 8 hours a day to be okay at work or receive your paycheck. And diffuse the belief that you need to be boxed into a job you don't like or having less freedom. Begin to look for a career that gives you more freedom to do what you wish to do rather than be there 8 hours a day. And then you have more freedom maybe to create or give something to yourself that's really beautiful each day that put you at peace. One of our associates chose for real estate, and that's a very independent profession. The downside is it's only commissioned, so you have to sell a house to earn anything. But he learned to dream with them in karmic systems, that this buyer would buy this house, and suddenly it would always work for him month to month. In light wave dreaming, if you're a salesperson of any kind, you light wave dream your own intention to foster a sale, and then it will show up perhaps very rapidly and at the speed of light. So if you want to try sales, then maybe that's fun if you like people and can be relaxed and talk to them and make them laugh and sing a little with you. If you don't like people, and many Cs don't really like people, you kind of look at them and go, ugh. If you don't like people, then perhaps a customer service or sales type oriented job isn't really for you. Now, sitting in front of the computer 8 hours a day programming or whatever it is may be the only other situation that perhaps you think of that pays a big ordering of the bills of your life because it earns a really big societal system of money. That's kind of weird because the economy is so stretched out, way out of the limits of itself, and that's something to realize beyond for you too. Why is it so costly to live anymore? Why does food keep going up and rent may go up, but the paycheck doesn't? Or neither does the dough if you're on the dough and you find yourself more and more limited than maybe you were 5 years ago or 8 years ago. And it's harder for you to save anymore. You need to diffuse the societal-based programming and realize beyond it if there's any kind of limitation at all. But you can earn money in other ways that you're not thinking of. There's lots of ways to create money if you're inventive. If you're artistic, you may paint something or create something beautiful and go sell it at the farmer's market. If you like vegetables and you have a little land, perhaps you raise them and sell them at the farmer's market. But there are also other things you could do that you're not thinking of. Maybe that can add to the pile of your own economy. And one is some of those MLM or multi-level marketing companies where you can become an associate around vitamins or minerals or a seer or something like that, and then go try to sell it to others, or go to health fairs where you can sell that kind of stuff to others or enroll them to participate too. Another can be to find a subsidiary job that you enjoy that's not much for you to do because it's simple and you enjoy it. Perhaps you will graduate over to doing that full time if that's possible. Young people kind of stretch themselves between 1 or 2 jobs, doing whatever they do, knowing they have another future through the education. The other thing to realize beyond is your own limitation of what you believe you could do in this life of yours. If you can see your way to another dream of something else you like to do, then there may be an education system you need to enter for a year or 2 to go procure that degree, and then you're better fostering another direction with a larger economy for you instead. There are jobs that pay more and jobs that pay less, and whatever it is, you can choose for one in a direction that pays more so that you have a little bit more money and work away the quagmire of limitation of resources in this life of yours. There are many things to realize beyond in an oligarchy society. The other is the problem of hate or dislike or disdain or rejection because the society itself is in a wheel of algorithms that say only these people are okay, and they form into a little clique bundle. It's very weird to witness the little clique wants to be around itself and not share with anybody else. That happens in most organizations or companies or in people in your lives. Even families can go into the clique where this group is okay and they have the black sheep that they leave out on the wall somewhere, that doesn't really belong to the family because they have the click pattern in the family happenstance of fate. It might be good to diffuse from click patterns and realize beyond them in your own associations and how you would like to work with that through times, because clicks form in bundles, but as you light wave dream separate from them, you can move in and out of each click and be accepted. That's a big change for maybe some of you that have organizations that are very click-oriented that you worked for. Clicks can change because something can shift in the management where suddenly new cliques form and old cliques that you belong to end, and suddenly you feel like you're on the outside of everything, perhaps again. As you diffuse the social programming that says you have to honor cliques and do not participate in them if you're not welcome, and all that junk that isn't really true, then you can motion in and out of whatever clusters form with people and be well with you and well with them and well with everything. So that's a good thing to realize beyond that may change your life circumference, some because you won't feel uncomfortable at work or in social occasions where people want to cling to one another in one direction or another and not be whole. So the biggest problem with the oligarchy society is they're not whole, and in their non-wholeness, they form in clusters that fractionate themselves and others through time. The more of the cliques that form, the more fractionated the ones that are outside the clique become. So if you're the one always outside the clique, it's a really important thing to diffuse from in social programming, because the one outside the clique kind of gets beaten up or injured in themselves in association with the oligarchy society. And so realize beyond that and say you're not interested in cliques. You go in and out and anywhere you want to be and belong, and then you be better in this life of yours. In the oligarchy society is marital programming. Whether you're married to a twin or married to another seed or not, or you're married to a seedling, or maybe you're married to something else, okay? Bonds form like that, and the older you are, it may be more difficult to get out from under the marriage if you're retired in particular. That marital program influences and affects you in ways you're not aware of, and it's time to begin to diffuse from that so you can bring in another societal program of dreaming as an agreement of care, and that's more of a family agreement. Family social programming is actually better for you than marriage programming. And even if you're a twin that's married, you're still under that affluence. So it's a very good thing to move beyond and think of yourself more as a family in social programming of that nature. That you can have, whereas in marriage it's usually a hate bond or a fear bond, and that's very weird. That doesn't affect people usually for the first 4 years of marriage, but then something may go sour, and on year 5 you don't quite understand it right away, and by year 6 or 7 now you're ready to run for the hills and perhaps get out of this union because it's not really working for you anymore. Divorce ratios of humanity that they're experiencing the hate bonds of marital relays, and that's very sad, but it's worldwide at this point. There are those romantics out there who believe in love and in marital vows and lifelong commitment to each other. There are always exceptions, with Asur'Ana and pairs marriage being one of them. However, their harmonious and loving marriage can be attributed to their spiritual enlightenment and attainment of full consciousness, which is rare these days in the oligarchy society. And this was true for your grandparents and your great-grandparents, where the marital bond was one of love. They came together and they stayed together maybe for 20, 30, 40, 50 years because there was a bond of love that was a part of the marital agreement. That was primarily in the West. In South America, it was a marital bond of freedom, which is a very strange bond in a way, but people feel less, perhaps, contained or imprisoned in their marriages in South America. In Africa is a bond of a certainty of truth, which is very interesting for a couple to go into in African systems. In Australia is a bond of you're my mate, and that used to play out in the system of the oligarchy society. In America, it has become a bond of hate. In England, it's a bond of hate, as it is in Sweden, Norway, Iceland, and most of Europe, except for Greece, where it's a bond of insecurity. And that's very weird. So it's like the bonds of marriage have gone into negativity. I won't say any more than that, but they're negative global-wide. And so get out of it and go into the bond of the family where it cares or its ways or its unison or its union, and then you be better in your marriages overall. It's good to realize through that what the bond of marriage does to you too, and let go of those cords of attachment in your heart to your wife or husband or partner if you're gay. Be aware that bonds that bond into the molecules don't really work for you, and reverse your molecular spin daily to get out of the molecular ties between you and your partner or your children or your workmates, because those are usually where they form the most, because you see each other day to day or live with one another. Therefore, in realizing beyond marriage systems, and they can occur subliminally, even if you haven't exchanged rings or vows or made it legal. So if you feel like they're your spouse as a twin and a partnership where there isn't marriage, look to see if you're still growing into marital programming and diffuse it anyway, and motion into family programming, and then you'll be better in the case way of the two or the many if you have children. That's better for you in the long haul. Realizing beyond the quagmires may have more sometimes to do with social programming than anything else. And that's a really weird thing to say, because seeds would generate their own holographic wisdom and not be subject to this programming, except that society is so big you can't stay out of it. 8 billion reposing all of this is too many for you to say, I can't live inside and I want to move outside of it. It just doesn't work that way. Out in the woods and even out in nature or in your national parks, there's still societal program because the government owns the land. It didn't used to be this way if it's wild and free. But as the government decided to own each acre of its nation and make them national parks or reserves or whatever they did, basically social programming moved out amongst the trees or the mountains or the birds and the bees or the tundra. That's really sad in a way because there's no place to be free. Now, the one place that this isn't so in Australia is the Blue Mountain chain of 5,000 miles of wilderness, canyons, and gum trees, because it's just too big to try to say anything. It's one big park, and we're not going to touch it because it's too big. We're not going to really break it up, and people get lost in it all the time if they go down there and they take the wrong turn to the path and get lost in the gum trees and sometimes paths. And so it's a rare, but you can go there to the Blue Mountain Parkland and feel the freedom of a non-oligarchy society and social programming. In front of those canyons going free, I feel absolutely free here, and that freedom wasn't even there in the big mountains of Switzerland or Austria. Even the ocean has a tendency to embrace oligarchy systems of beachland, which means it's a dream for holidays usually. So most beaches are holiday dreaming, which is a social ordering of saying, well, this is vacation land and people come here to enjoy it and relax and then go back to their 9-hour days of work where they pull their hair out or whatever happens in most people in this society. Freedom from the social programming, even out in nature, but you can diffuse whatever you see that you're into or doesn't work for you and bring in a more positive string of programming to dream your life. Now you can't go program free entirely, except maybe in your home. You can make it a program free environment and say social programming isn't going to relate to this home and myself, that the home is a home of my homecoming in my seed, and in it I'm not in any social programming here in my reality. Now, if you're living with oligarchy people, then you choose to do that with the angels that are inhabiting them or creating this angelic seed around them, and then perhaps it will be easier in your home to feel free. That's maybe a nice gift for all of you, to just create a space in your home where each can be free to be who they are outside of the social quagmire of all of this heavy-duty programming saying it does this direction or that direction, positive and negative, and social assemblage points that you're trying to diverge from in your own foundry, where you have these other assemblage points that are all positive and trigger points that are positive to direct them, and that's built in your home generally. You take a small version of it to work, but mostly it's in your home because that's where you sit to understand yourself, meditate, find your sacred space, be at one with yourself, and be at one with your Dao and Tao. If you're with your twin, you try to be as one with your twin and have a good day and sway together or cook together, clean together. If you're by yourself, then you cook for yourself and bless everything you do and be well in your home in the freedom of who you really are outside of the social programming of so many. Social programming and the place where you end up in a space to be in this position or that. It's important if you're in a negative position in the office circumstance with others to realize beyond what puts you in that negative position and diffuse it and find a more positive position in relation to your workmates. That could be true even with your parents if there's a lot of negativity with your mother or father and you have to see them, or your grandmother, grandfather, uncle, aunt, brother, sister. If it's negative, you can choose to change your position in the family orientation of societal dreaming. And if it's the one to always be told of or have something rise against you that feels sour, It's time to realize beyond what that program is and diffuse it and grow into another system that says, I'll be in the beautiful one, or the sweet one, or the princess, or the prince, or something like king or queen instead. And in those positions, the family will then relate to you more out of respect, and your journey with them will change. That can be so at work too. Whatever the negative position is, you don't have to be in that. Also at work, there's more choices. I mean, there are king and queen and prince and princess positions. Socialite, or the one that gathers people to you. There's the humorous that makes everybody laugh. There's the position of the one who knows and everybody comes to because you know the business or you understand what you're doing. And sometimes that's management, but sometimes not. There's also the one who cares, the one that organizes events or organizes things for the company. There's the one that leads graciously. There's the one who fosters others. There's the one that's like the psychologist to others. And there's one more that's kind of interesting. It's the one who simply is there and is astute, just knows what they know. Any of those 13 positions are better to choose for in a work circumstance or a social circumstance where the whole wheel of possibility is there than it is to be something else like that's a negative and nobody likes to be around. I'm going to tell you what they are, and there's something to realize beyond heavily being in any of these negative positions, and there's 5. And nobody wants to talk to or relate to. That's not a good position because perhaps you have a very lonely position where you're in the office all day and nobody comes to say hello. You go out to lunch by yourself, you come back and get all the work done, and nobody says anything. That's a very weird position, but often there are those in every company that take that on, and they're just like the worker bee system. So from an oligarchy system perspective, that's the worker bee. They keep gluing something onto this, or painting something, or running a machine to make this stuff come out the other end. And that's a very sick thing, but there are many in the invisible position in any kind of factory-oriented job. For some people, that just really doesn't work for you. Do with your life because you don't want to be invisible anymore. Defeated. So you're the one that ends up laid off or fired. And don't confuse that with the one who's invisible, because if you're in the invisible position, you're not necessarily defeated. But sometimes you feel so invisible that you think you're going to be defeated, and you think you're going to lose your job, and that's not really true. You notice in your office the people that are invisible or defeated. As a seed, maybe you encourage the defeated one to brighten up and go do something else. You acknowledge the one that's invisible and never acknowledge at all. By bringing them gifts from some place or buy them a hot dog or something good to eat and say, "Thank you for all your secretarial work," or whatever you've done as the invisible person of the society of this business. Deeply disgruntled and unfulfilled and complains about everything, which is the third position. Now, if they're the boss, everybody has to tolerate his bushwhacking of you, saying how he's complaining about the sales of the organization or the way the business is structured, or they're complaining about people they dislike, including maybe you. But if they're an employee and they complain enough and they irritate everybody, they could be laid off. So it's a very negative social program to be in that kind of position, and don't go there ever. Don't say your complaints to anybody because it can lay you off or end up without a job. Try to be positive or find a job you can relate that put you in a positive assemblage point where you feel more honored for what it is you're trying to do in this life of yours. The fourth position is one of sickness, where the individual actually gets sick, and it may take years, but suddenly they're the one with pneumonia in the hospital. They could have an accident and maybe even lose the job if they can't recoup, or they could end up with cancer or some fatal disease and have to withdraw out of the organization. That doesn't need to be you either, because it will start to make you feel sick inside if you take on that position. The fifth negative position is about the one who fails to do their work, meaning that due to some position of that, they just never get anything done right, and eventually they feel dejected and removed. If they're a boss, and that's a really unusual thing, and they have enough authority, then they don't do much. They get everybody else to do everything for them, and they go play golf or something else weird, or go to the bar and socialize with clients or whatever they're into. So it's obviously always better to be a boss in the negative position. But whatever it is, stay away from all five and don't go there in any kind of job-oriented circumstance. Realize beyond that social programming and go into one of the 13 positive positions that you could choose for instead. And here's the other thing, as families have their negative positions too, but they're simpler, and you can kind of recognize this usually in families of 4 or more. There's always the king and the queen, the prince and the princess, and there's the black sheep. If you've been the black sheep, then you're the one that's not welcome at home very much. Or if you've grown into that position because of something you were interested in, then that's you. King and queen doesn't always mean mother and father, because the king can be your brother, or you can move into the queen role and determine what the family does as the queen in that system. If you're familiar with doing that, life is better because you can put yourself into a queen position at work or a king position at work and always be admired. If you never had that position where you were the prince or the princess, that's different, because the prince needs the king to acknowledge them, and the princess needs the king to put on his lap and tell her she's beautiful, and the queen adores the prince, and the queen admires the princess. Therefore, it's kind of an odd derivation that you end up with those positions also at work. When they end up at work, it's very obvious who's the queen or king, because they just dominate the world of themselves. Years ago, Asur'Ana worked in this office for a facsimile company where she was in customer service and traveling. The secretary was absolutely queen. If you crossed her, she told you off. Asur'Ana never crossed her. She liked me because I healed her all the time. The king was the service manager, and he was very odd too, and that's a whole other story. When you acknowledge who's king and queen, and you respect them and tell them they're wonderful, they always love you. They put you in the prince or princess position next to themselves, and then you're better in your corporate dance with whoever's king and queen. If you become the king and queen, then you're the authority, and you can tell people what to do or not to do. It's kind of an interesting position to be in a corporate circumstance, because it brings you a lot of power or maybe more freedom in whatever your regime or whatever it is that you choose to do. Those positions are generally available to choose for by C's more easily, and then life may be a little bit better than in any of the negative positions you find yourself in. Any position that you find yourself in any circumstance with anyone you know, even love affairs or children of a love affair or parents of your lover who can be weird on their own, they are all something to realize beyond, to put yourself in a position that works for you in light wave motion. So first, you have to realize what position you're in against them that doesn't work for you. Then you have to realize what position you could go into that works better for you. Then you have to light wave stream it by filling yourself with more and more and more and more light, until suddenly your dream dominates theirs. and you go into the position you want to sit in. You can put them in a kind position too, and not in a negative one, because if they are more positive, you will relate to them better anyway, even if they have been a grouch for you or something else in this world of your own existence. And that's how it kind of works to shift the assemblage point position of another. Now there's this grumpy old lady that rents her cottage out to Asur'Ana years ago. She has cancer and she's very negative, even though she's a seed, and she does this to her all the time. Asur'Ana doesn't want to hear one more of her negative stories ever, and she just pumps her with light and flips her assemblage point. Then the old lady says to Asur'Ana, "You just make me feel better," and she walks away doing something else. So it just really can work if you just understand how the equations work within this society. Everything is an equation, a numerical code, kind of like a program. So the negative programs usually end with an 8, and the positive programs usually end with a 7. So any program you want to run with somebody needs to end with a 7, and then you're better. If you put them in a program they can run with a 7, then you're better together. That's very weird, but it's a society of 7-7. So the ones who get the better dreams have programming that ends in 7s. 8s generally are kind of a program of unity that's Native American or Hawaiian or Aborigine or Sami or some other indigenous system. In the indigenous society, the programs that end in 8 worked better with them, as it holds a particular synergy of medicine or creational theory when you think about the Creator, the land, the kingdoms, and everything you love. Kingdoms respond to programs that end in 8 to put you in kind of a sway or a bliss with the trees, or the land, or the birds and the bees, or the lake or the ocean, and then you feel better. And so with nature, you want a program that ends in 8 if you want to feel better, which is weird because the same program can make you feel negative with people around you too much. Asur'Ana learned this living on the islands. She could run programs ending in 8 because it's an indigenous Hawaiian culture. They were all positive, and everybody that learned that related really well to one another in their jobs or their businesses, and they were just so sweet wherever they went. And yet, if they went to the mainland trying to live in 7s, to be well with people is very difficult sometimes for indigenous people unless they're amongst one another. Therefore, we say to you that cultures can be different. So if you're with people of other cultures, and that can include people in China, people from India, people from Vietnam or Tibet, and people from indigenous cultures, you want to run programs with them that end in 8. And then you get along in love and merriment and joy and creational theory of existence that says we relate to each other like the forest to the land, or the lake to the shore, the sea to the palm trees, that we relate together because we're whole and we're one. It's sad that the whole society kind of lost that understanding somewhere along the line. Chinese people still relate that way today in spite of all their populations, and even some of the things they do in factories, or even the pollution that they try to live with for sometimes in a society that hadn't learned to purify things very well. But whatever it is, they can relate in 8s often. If Chinese people don't get along with their mother or father or somebody else, they're running 7s, and then they don't like each other. That's very weird to have an 8 programming next to a 7 programming in China, where there can be absolute bitterness and hatred about everything, and that's kind of weird. In Australia, people like to run 8 too, so they're kind of a unique culture that way because they want the good day mate principle running here and there and here and there. So Aussies generally run 8s. But if you get somebody suddenly from Europe or another country that runs 7s, and they end up your boss, or they end up in a position of power over you in Australia, that's very weird, and the Aussies really don't like it, and they may figure a way to boot them out of their position because it doesn't really work well for the office or the company or anything else. Bosses in 7 programming have power in America and Europe and Canada, and even in Africa is different too. So we explain that to you too. If you've been to Africa, it's a very indigenous land, and people try to run 8s, but they end up with programming of inefficiency. So they don't really know what they're doing, and then businesses break down, or the power plant doesn't get repaired, or that happened to someone in Cape Town that pair knew, where his friend learned to wear a flashlight for his hat if he went out at night because the power was out and nobody had street lights or anything else. Very strange, but the society didn't do what was right to keep the power plant going because the programming that they run is just inefficient when it comes to a system of order and dream to keep something going on. Now the Aussies don't go that far, and they make sure to hire people that keep the power going and everything that they need, while at the same time they prefer to be in an 8-8 system where they just enjoy each other and enjoy the land. So they've kind of figured a halfway point that works for them. In America, work is mostly 7/7, unless you're in a job that you enjoy some, and then it can be 8/8. Our realtor affiliate found that he could do 8/8 in real estate because people needed to get along with him to list the house when the actual transaction had to be in a 7/7. So any business transaction perhaps is best in 7/7. So if you are in sales, you run the 8/8 to keep people happy in the programming you exchange and want to work with you. And then when the deal comes down and you get the contract signed, that needs to be a 7/7 energy. And if you know that you put yourself in the program to close if you're in sales and put them in the programs to close, then you write the deal and it all works out for you. You may need to keep running those programs until it closes if there's a lengthy closed time, such as in real estate, but it's very much that way, and everything's a program. You can find programs in the realization of you that work with you in each and everything that you're here to do. If you see programs that work better with people at work, then run them and let go of the ones that don't, because they'll be happier and you'll be happier, and everything will really begin to work out. If 8/8 programming works better at work for people to get along, then do that. Now the management is going to come along and want you to do what you're supposed to do, and they're going to try to overlay programming of 7/7 on top of you. Then everybody either goes into fear or misery or fright that they're going to lose their job or whatever it is. Well, as a seed, you can erase that program. Get a big eraser out in your mind, like at the end of a pencil, and just erase the program out of the office and say, we're not going to go there with that 7/7 stuff that puts us in fear or makes us feel unwell or makes us feel like we're less than the big boss who is a jerk anyway. So whatever that is, you can choose to change the nature of how people relate at work by getting everything into an 8/8 sequence. And then when it comes to closing the deal, it may still have to be a 7/7 contract. That's a whole other story anywhere, because work also has its computer time or whatever, but there's also social occasions to say hello, and people relate better in 8/8 programming if you can, to be social and care for one another and say hello or be present in their bodies to understand who you are and what you need and all that other stuff. So be at peace with that, because in the truth of it, it's all mechanical in the society. It's all a program of numbers. People run in rudimentary equations to do anything, whether it's the waitress in a restaurant or the person stocking the shelves, or the one on the phone when you call the telephone company, or some other business you need to engage with. And if you're an 8 with them, they'll be kind with you. If you're in an 8 and they're in a 7, they may be very quizzically abusive towards you, more rude. If you can flip them into an 8 program, then they'll be better with you, and often that's easier to do by switching their assemblage point into something positive. Then the program changes. So in this society, and even in you, your programming is related to your assemblage points. Now you've received new assemblage points. That's positive programming, and it all ends with 8s. Passion, care, sway, love, freedom, all these things, they end in 8s. If you go there, you're positive, and if you put others into programming that's 8 associated in an assemblage point that's positive, they're going to be very much better with you or very well with you, and then work alongside you to accomplish whatever the task is. 7, people usually create a superiority, power subordination, and this sense that you have to be better, or you are the bad kid on the block, or doing something wrong when truthfully you haven't. And so you shove the boss into an 8 program, because they all have them somewhere in their lives with family or girlfriends or partners or something else that they enjoy, children. Then you be better alongside them as you let them shift into a positive assemblage point in relation to you. Now, it may mean a raise or a promotion or something else if you really get along. And all you need to do is realize beyond the power games or the control games or the abuse games or the system of the 7 that say money's everything and you're nothing. And the more money you have, the more special or sacred you are, which is nonsense. Sacredness has nothing to do with money, and yet, in the metaphysical system, they went there a lot. All these big business, big gurus, and ones that could build their mansions. That's nuts, because spirituality and realization is a heart space of understanding you and motioning you into a place that you can enjoy life and feel fulfilled. Motion yourself to get along with others in love and care and be better in your life, and really that's all. Then you can be at peace and know yourself better and dream the dreams you really like to, in order to understand something else about yourself ahead. That's really all we have to say today, and we bless you greatly, and we thank you for everything. Namaste.